Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the first of our debates today. This is being recorded, this debate, and it's going to be, I think, very interesting. The topic is, must construction firms change or die? And I'm just going to say this, that yesterday I walked right through the middle of Cheltenham. It's not working. It's because I haven't turned it on. See, I can project so well, having spent many, many days on the boards, darling. I walked through the centre of Cheltenham, and there was a big new housing development that I walked past, and beautifully done. It was all very neat, and it was still being finished. There were people sweeping the last bits of the roadworks. It was all really new. Not one solar panel on a vast array of beautifully tiled roofs in brand new buildings, and next door to it, an old house dating from, I would say, the mid-Victorian era, and I'm going to swear now, which had solar panels on the roof, retrofitted. What is going on with the building industry? I can't help being slightly angry about it, ladies and gentlemen. I've had solar panels on my house for 15 years. They do work in this country. They do make a difference. They do generate power. F*** the clouds. Sorry. But I know we're all adults here. Sometimes I've done a rant like this, then I see a 5-year-old in the front row and go, oh God, but not today. So I do, please forgive me for my bad language, but there is an element where, as someone outside the building industry looking at it, going, well, what is going on? I mean, the same frustration can exist in the motoring industry. I've felt it very long time, but things are finally, properly, really bigly changing in the automotive industry, in the transport industry, in trucks and diggers and buses and cars and bikes. You know, that is really, really happening very fast now. But the building industry it's in 1978. That's where I think the building industry is at the moment. It has not changed. So that's going to be fun for you guys. So I will now introduce our lovely panel, who really didn't need to hear that tirade. Sam Stacey. Thank you, Sam. Who's Challenge Director of Transforming Construction at Innovate UK. Sam, tell me to shut up and tell us what's really going on.
Okay. So, is this working? So, I mean, clearly there is something massively wrong with the construction industry. The profits are tiny. We've seen Carillion go bust. We've seen quality problems out there in the industry. We have labour shortages that are, big news at the moment. Been a long-term problem in the construction industry, or this labour shortage situation, and we've got to transform the sustainability of the built environment. So, sorry. Oh yeah. Hopefully, bloody hell! Now I can really hear it.
What he just said just now was disgusting. I'm glad you couldn't hear it.
So, labour shortages, lack of profits. Completely appalling environmental performance from the industry. Clearly, we need to change. But the fundamental principles are not that complicated. We know, and I know with the Transforming Construction programme, that we can take literally 2/3 of the labour out of producing buildings and achieve the same results. So, we've got a labour shortage. There is a hell of a lot of labour that we can free up. We can do enormous things with the energy performance of buildings. We know that we can take 2/3 of the energy demand out of buildings. We know that we can make green solutions, we can work clean solutions for the remaining energy demand of buildings. There's an enormous amount we can do there. We know that we're chucking away something like 20% of the materials that we use in buildings. I mean, absolutely incredible. 100 skips are leaving the site for every £1 million worth of construction that we're building. So these are the underlying principles. On the one hand, you've got contractors making, say, 1% profit and sometimes going bust in the process of making buildings. On the other hand, you've got the cost and time associated with the labour, the energy, the materials that we're just wasting. We have solutions. Actually, and I know there'll be some lively debate here, I feel we've got a tremendous trajectory and momentum to implement this change. I think the change is underway. We've changed government procurement. We've changed the way that people perceive off-site fabrication of construction. We've demonstrated, and you'll see it so much here, we've demonstrated that buildings can generate their own clean energy and do it absolutely cost effectively. You know, this is not about putting on the hair shirt, kind of spending all your savings. There are solutions that are practical and demonstrated here today that are affordable and are going to address fuel poverty, are going to address comfort in buildings and so on. So we have all these opportunities, and at the end of the day, this is not sort of, you know, I don't want to see this, angry though I might get about certain barriers, I don't want to see this as kind of, you know, it's a big fight. Ultimately, I want to say to people, look, we can have a better world, just do it this way and you can have a better world. And, you know, it'll be more beautiful, it'll be more comfortable, it'll be more sustainable, and the jobs that are done in the industry will be more satisfying jobs as well. You know, that's another thing. I mean, we're in a situation now where, you know, it's all about labour shortages, and people aren't so much worried about losing their jobs because of the shortage situation. But actually the kind of jobs that we're talking about and the shift that we're talking about in terms of jobs actually represent machines and automation and sensible approaches to things, taking out the grunt work, taking out the real rubbish from jobs and enabling people to get in there and do what they're best as humans, which is communicate and collaborate and organise to do things efficiently and so forth, and not be left in that situation where you're out in the bloody cold and the rain trying to figure out where the tool you need for the next job is. Anyway, I shall stop ranting there and hand over to others for different perspectives.
Thank you, Sam, very much. Nicola, I mean, thank you. Sorry, big round for Sam there, thank you. Nicola, you spoke on our last panel briefly, but it's really interesting what you're doing, so I'm very keen to hear what you're going to tell us. Nicola Bird, founder and managing director of AccXel.
Yes, so I guess when we're looking at introducing change, there are two fundamental starters, I guess, which are the finance side of things, but then you've got the people side of things. So finance aside, you know, people need to understand why they're creating change, what impact it's going to have and what benefits it's going to have to not only the environment, to themselves, the jobs, and that's got to be communicated a lot better. When on the finance side of things, so when I briefly spoke about the major house builders, and I completely get your point about the solar panels, because it's just frustrating when I'm visiting a lot of our developers' sites that I'm seeing exactly the same thing. And during the pandemic, the government introduced the waivering of the stamp duty, which only just saw the prices, the house prices anyway. And it is a really fruitful time for housing developers, and you know they're making north of about 20% net margin. So it's a good time at that. So you talk about construction companies struggling, but the house building sector is booming, and you know there's good money and good profit in there. But when you're looking at Help to Buy, so another government scheme, I want to know why there isn't a criteria in there for developers when they're applying for these bids for Help to Buy, because it's essentially putting extra money on their bottom line, why there isn't a criteria in there for net zero, which there currently isn't. And it's the same for education, for apprentices. There isn't any criteria to make people change, and until we start influencing change through legislation, through criteria, and how we're impacting finance within their business, I think it's going to be slower than we anticipated.
Thank you, Nicola. Grant, David. Sorry, you didn't really get a chance.
There was only two left.
Sorry, yeah, I do. So I got a 50-50 chance and I got it wrong. I do apologise. Dr. David Hancock, Construction Director of Infrastructure and Projects Authority.
So I guess there's a thing called a something sandwich, and I guess the optimism is on the other side to me, and I'm the kind of a bit in the middle, because I'm actually shamed and embarrassed and terrified of the future, because I work on this little project you might have heard. Hands up who's ever heard of the cladding crisis.
The cladding, yes, I have.
Right? 11 million people blighted by the cladding crisis. Right? Started off with a tragedy that suddenly became 400 buildings. Secretary of State, I worked with Secretary of State, called me in and said, we've got this crisis. How many buildings do you think it is? I said, well, what is it? It's buildings over 18 metres. How many have we got? So I went and asked. Nobody knew how many buildings in this country were over 18 metres. So I then said, well, how many are clad in ACM? And they went, we don't know how many buildings are over 18 metres, David. I can't tell you how many are clad in ACM. I came in, we ran the project. The ACM cladding, you'll be pleased to know, 435 buildings was where we started from. Where we started from, we're still getting buildings coming on. We'll have done or started on 97% by the end of this year of those buildings. Very good, you'd have thought, wouldn't you? And then somebody said to me, but it's not just ACM, David. There's this thing called high-pressure laminates. So I said, well, how many of them are there? And they went, we don't know that, but more than ACM. So we opened up a fund. 3,000 buildings applied for that fund, of which 1,000 were eligible, so they didn't know how high their buildings were either. And then we said, well, actually, combustible materials, David, on there. And that includes wood, and of course, you guys all think wood is fantastic, and I get that, but it's combustible. How many buildings? Thousands. And not only that, as I take panels off, I look at the as-built drawings, and they're still drawings, no digital. And guess what? They're not as-built. Fire stoppings, not there. Gaps in the fire stoppings. Fire doors that don't fit. So here's an industry, we look at the past and say, look how well we've built in the past. Probably 40 or 50,000. There isn't a single person in this room who works for a company that hasn't been touched by it somewhere. If you listen to the BBC podcast on Grenfell, all the way through from product manufacture that have, am I allowed to use the word lied about their product, had it certified and then put it on with everybody knowing that it's combustible. And we're now saying, what we're going to do, David, we're going to have a revolution. We're going to build loads more of these things. Loads of them. And not only that, we're going to go to a platform where we're going to have one and then we're going to do it 50,000 times. And I worry about a product recall. It's all right doing it on your car when you can go to a garage. You try taking your house into a garage. Right, so if we don't get this right, if our quality isn't at the highest level, if we haven't tested it like places at the AccXel Building Centre, like the Construction Innovation Hub, if we aren't sure about every nut bolt, I'm going to end up with, it's £5 billion of your money that is paying to put the industry right. Think how big it will be if we get this wrong now. So this is our last chance to make sure that nothing goes out the door that we're not proud of. It's not innovate or die. What worries me is the fact that people don't care. There is no pride. Where's the pride in what we do? I worked a long time ago on a thing called Terminal 5. There's some people here who probably worked on it. We look at it and go, we built that. Now, people build things and go, just get the money, get out, and if they sue us, we'll close the company down. That's the industry that is our construction industry. That is also the industry that my daughter said to me, why the hell would I join it? You might have drone pilots, you might have fantastic things like that, but the things that make the paper are the cladding. The walls that fell down in a school in Edinburgh because the tie bars weren't put in. The fact that Crossrail's taking 3 years longer than it should have and costing billions of pounds more. That's the things that make the headline, not the lovely things like this. How much do you think I'm going to have to spend on marketing to get people to join our industry if all they know is that? So my plea to you is please make sure we get this right. This is your chance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Follow that, Sam. Stacey.
That's,
Sorry, I get that wrong. Sorry, Grant Findlay, sorry, from Strategy Development and Innovation Lead at Sir Robert McAlpine. Yes, that makes it even worse. Follow that.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Roger. How do I follow that? I was going to take us back a step. I was going to share with you a conversation I remember having with a chap called Nick Jankel, who's a bit of a thought leader and keynote speaker on transformational leadership. And in 2018, he was telling me about the triple threats that were going to impact all businesses moving forward. And those triple threats were digital technology make our business models redundant, because machines can do things better than we can as humans. They can do things to better quality without bias, without fatigue. The second threat was that customers, employees, and the communities are more demanding. And we know that from experiences David's talked about. It's quite right that customers are more demanding, but that applies across ethical requirements, social requirements, and people's expectations of business to be more than just a profit generator. And the third threat was around the disruption of global systems, particularly industrialisation, how it's impacted climate change and the nature crisis. I know that conversation made a real impact on me and got me thinking really hard about how I think about our business, how I think about the construction sector. And I think, despite all the problems we've got, there are lots of opportunities for it to deal with some of these things. On the climate crisis, we've heard very eloquently already from this panel and from other panelists this morning. We've got an obligation to make sure we reduce our carbon emissions. Built environment generates 40% of global carbon emissions. 11% of global carbon emissions are cement production. That's more than the global aviation industry. Isn't that a phenomenal statistic? So we need to be finding new materials. We need to be finding alternative ways of making sure that our embodied carbon in our buildings is less than it is reduced. We need to be taking the lead from Active Building Centre and looking for ways of eliminating energy use in buildings, getting it down as low as possible, and buildings becoming positive contributors to our energy system, so our systems become more resilient. On the social side of things, I actually think we've come quite a long way in the construction sector about what we're doing with social value. The Social Value Act and the government's drive on that has been very impactful, but I think we need to extend that to all of the SDGs. We need to think about all the things we heard this morning about food, and poverty and those things. I think the IPA's report on transforming infrastructure 2030 and the reference within that to SDGs has really gave me a real beacon of hope in terms of how we think about that in the future. We've already heard about war on talent and the labour shortages, but I think how we create better places to work in construction, and because it's not perceived to be a very great, sexy place to work. I still think as a parent of teenage kids, I grew up in the days of Auf Wiedersehen Pet, and that's probably my one enduring memory. If I wasn't in construction, that'd be my one memory of what a construction site's like. And so I think our ability to use some of the digital and the drones and things to access a new, more diverse talent base is a really important, great opportunity for us. And finally, I think digital. I think some of the work that Transforming Construction Innovation Hub are doing on how we use digital technologies to improve quality, improve deliverability. We need to follow through and we need to support that. My reservation on that is we may fall into the trap of American car makers, is that we try and use digital technology and robots to do things the way we're doing them today. And the opportunity with digital is to transform how we use digital to do things better. And finally, a bit of a hobby horse I have, which is data. The lessons learned from our projects, from Thermal 5, from the Olympics, from Crossrail, are embedded in that project data. But that project data is put in a box and forgotten about. We need to be taking the lessons learned, and we need to properly understanding lessons learned from projects. And we can do that now in a way we've never been able to do before because of the power of advanced data analytics. So we need to think about how can we use data analytics to surface new insights on how we run projects so that we can make every future project as good or better than the last project. Because we've singularly failed, not just in residential, to improve our project performance. But data analytics provides a really great opportunity. And my final point is, there's only one planet, and we all operate in one ecosystem. We all operate in the same ecosystem of owners, suppliers, designers, contractors, if we collaborate and we pivot the model from competition to collaboration, we stand a little bit of a chance of solving some of these big industry and global issues that we face today. Collaboration from me, Robert.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It was a joke the first time.
I mean, can I just stay with you for a bit, Grant? Because I'm intrigued as to why you think, I mean, this is really for all of you, but I'll start with you, Grant, why you think the building industry is resistant to change. I think it's fair to say there is some resistance to change in many sectors.
I'm sure we've all got there's a whole host of reasons, Robert. Where do you want to start? I think there's a cultural thing of inherently as people we are kind of most people are resistant to change. There are lots of factors in play in the construction sector. I do lay a lot of blame at the insurance sector and the legal sector and how we have boxed up different obligations and risks with parties that gets in the way of proper collaboration, proper partnership, proper alliancing. And some of the projects that some of us have worked on in the past have broken through those barriers and created a momentum for doing something differently. So I think we do need to serve, and the government have tried in the past to promote different forms of insurance and projects. It's never quite taken off, but I think there are some really good thinking about how we can start to deal with some of that, because those are things that really affect how people perform, how people behave when under a contract. And an industry is so tiered in terms of multiple layers of supply chain that the situations that David's faced with now, a lot of those have been created by the way in which the contracts and the parties have been operated, those contracts.
I mean, do you want to say something about that aspect of it, the kind of resistance to change?
I mean, 2 to 3% profit margins doesn't give you much chance for innovation.
Yeah.
So low profit margins are something that drives us down there. And collaboration, we find it hard enough to collaborate on projects, let alone as an industry. And yet, if we're talking about going to manufacturing, and I do think, even though I see the press, that manufacturing is probably our way out. But that requires standardisation, it requires collaboration, it requires the digital data to work together. And, you know, at the end of the day, it requires people's attitudes to change. There's no new technology that we need to have. It's all here. You can walk around here and you'll see everything you need. Behaviour-wise, it's just, you know, we still direct employment, even things like direct employment, IR35, tax, you know, we spend more time trying to be economically clever than we do, you know, socially clever, and that really worries me. But and we all know that the way out is through standardisation. One of the projects I'm working on, the 4 new prisons, standard prison blocks. Somebody showed me a picture of a school, looks the same as a school, and Sam was probably going to talk about that, but actually this room looks very similar to one that was done for Kingston Townhouse that won the Riva Prize. Digital. Digital twinning. Everybody seems to think that digital is going to cost a lot of money, but actually, and it's called digital, the townhouse, Kingston Townhouse, which just won the Riva Prize, so any architects who tell me that digital and modern methods are boring, it just won an architectural prize. But you know what? They built it digitally. The architect, the client, and the suppliers agreed on everything. In 3 years, they've made 8 changes. And guess what? The price they put for it in the beginning is the price they paid for it, because they got what they asked for in the first place. I'm not going to mention HS2, but if I look at HS2 10 years ago, what we thought we were pricing up, and then I look at what HS2 is now, it's not surprising there's a difference. It's not the same railway. So, poor profit margins, bad collaboration, bad use of digital. But apart from that, things are going well.
I mean, I was just wondering whether, you know, do you feel that there are young people that will come into the industry that might have a different attitude, that might be more, you know, just be more aware of the technologies that we've, you know, that are on display here that we've been talking about?
Yeah. What is that? Can you hear me?
Is the mic on? It does. It's got a look.
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%, and we're already getting strong applicants through for AccXel that are really keen on making a difference. And I'm sure people have seen within their own businesses now when they're interviewing for new staff, if you can ever get any new staff applying for jobs, because it seems to be an issue in every sector that I speak to, that it is on their agenda. They want to work for a business that has a good social value purpose, and it's not just a tick box exercise, and they want to feel part of that. And when they can say they have built it, and everybody in construction, you know, the classic pointing of the finger saying to your kids, oh hey, I built that. But let's be proud of something that we've built and make it sustainable, so it's going to be future-proof for the next 50 years. But you know, you've spoken a lot about the resources here and education. So this is a fantastic resource, and people again that will make things happen on the ground. They tend to be sort of visual, kinesthetic learners, and if they can see something, they can understand it. So as soon as I came up here and I had a look around the houses outside, so if you haven't seen them yet, please go and have a look at them. But you can get it straight away. It'll click. And I think we need to do more of that. And if we can have more facilities like this to be able to bring students out of university, out of colleges, so they can be the innovators, they can be the ones to push the change and then again sort of push it upstream.
Great stuff. Sam?
Yeah, I mean, clearly we've had some huge barriers to change in the industry, and you know, I don't think David in particular has flagged it up. Low profit margins, and then the perception that there's no cash to make changes. And frankly, there are established habits. I mean, for all the flaws of the construction industry, people get to a certain point in their careers, they feel confident about being able to do the job they're doing, and they dig their heels in. They do not want change. But as I've sort of described in my opening pitch, there is an absolutely better world out there where we can take 50% of the cost out of the whole life cost out of a building and make it all round better. So there is this enormous opportunity. So, you know, I see this analogy with the car industry, whereby, as I understand it, the incumbent car companies were struggling financially, certainly a few years back. Tesla comes along. Now, Tesla's market cap is 3 times the total market cap of the top 10 construction companies in the world. Now, if that doesn't kind of flag up the fact that there is financial opportunity here, I don't know what does. There is an enormous amount of financial opportunity. It does seem that the bulk of the incumbents in the industry are very resistant to grabbing that opportunity. They are so conditioned to hanging on to every penny of cash and doing things the old way. We need disruptors. We need people either coming from the existing industry going, okay, I'm going to change my business now and I'm going to do it fundamentally differently. Or we need people who are going to come in and say, right, I'm going to commit to doing things differently. Invest in the skills, invest in the digital capabilities, invest in the off-site manufacturing capabilities. And actually, I don't think it's as, from what I can work out, I don't think the amounts of money that are required to do this are as scary as might be thought. Because, you know, coming back a little bit to what Grant was saying, I think that the information problem, deficit of information or deficit of shared information, is at the heart of it all. If we can get the information working better, and there are some fantastic digital innovators out there in the world, not necessarily in the construction industry, everything else starts to fall into place. So with digital disruption in the industry, I think there are huge profits to be made. And once you've kind of created the order through that, then you can start to feel confidence in the, albeit relatively more modest profits, return on investment, that you can get from investing in off-site fabrication and so forth. So, you know, I absolutely see a path through to a vastly better industry. But, you know, I do recognise that there are, you know, barriers to overcome.
I would love to open this up to questions. I'm hoping somebody... Oh, there. Good. That's different. I saw your hand go up first, so would you just wait for the microphone. There we go. Got a system working now. Good point. So, yeah.
I'll jump in and then they go to others. I mean, I think we've proven with the Active Building Centre, with the Construction Innovation Hub, with the Transforming Construction programme generally, better is absolutely feasible. So what does that imply? That implies that the people and organisations in positions of power should be bold and should enforce these bold targets. And then the industry and the world will start to fall into line. And once you've got that momentum, economies of scale, the real build-up of new habits, then we'll get there. But I would exhort everybody to be bold, stick to their guns, and look at the data. Frankly, the data shows that this works.
I've experienced a similar sort of issue. In our contracting business, we've got just over 100 vans on the road, and we wanted to change all of those to electric vans by the middle of next year. I started working with the developers, might have been this time last year, maybe January, asking them about the infrastructure, and not one of them, one of them was interested, but it was really hard work, and we offered to pay all the costs to put in all the infrastructure, and just because it wasn't on their agenda, they didn't really want to make it happen. So even our business, we're really we're trying to do what's best, and we're trying to be put in policies, and we're trying to think what's good for our business, but we're limited because of how much infrastructure we can work on developers' sites. So as a contractor, there's only so much you can do. So I completely agree. We need to find a way of how we can hold the developers to account and make them put in this infrastructure to make it easier for the supply chain to hit their own targets.
Can I just say, I thought the very interesting point that this gentleman made was about the land ownership, the people who own the land, who are presumably selling the land for building development. In a way, you're going back to the source with that. I don't know how those relationships and contracts work, but that does. I've never heard that notion before, and it does sound like quite a good base lever to apply some pressure. But sorry.
So, is this? So one of the things is I have very little power over local authorities and very little say over property developers. Basically, I'm the construction developer for social infrastructure, so hospitals, schools. We're moving that way. We have carrot and stick, but let's be serious. So the carrot is what we call it, go and have a look at the construction playbook, which is a way that government will contract with people, and also, as Grant mentioned, the Transforming Infrastructure Programme route map to 2030, which is led off the UN SDGs, which is the first time that we've started moving from that. And then the stick, because we are going to end up with and this shows you what a poor industry, we're going to end up with a building safety regulator. That's going to come in around about 23. It takes a little while for legislation to get through Parliament, otherwise we'd have it sooner. We're going to have a building products regulator because of the things that have gone wrong, because our products are not always what they seem. And we're going to have the building safety bill coming in. So you've got, and that's coming in 23, but if you wait for that to come in, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, because that's going to ask for data. It's going to ask for you, what are you building? What's on the outside of your building? What have you built it with? Where's your social? And already we're asking on our stuff for social involvement. The new prisons, again, we're hoping at some point to get a fully electric prison, that is going to be working off solar panels. Wow. Yeah, we're looking at that. So I have a belief, and this is where we're saying, that if central government does it, it will influence people, because the other thing is building safety for buildings over 18 metres. I'm hoping companies aren't going to go, well, the ones over 18 metres will build properly, but everything else will just do what we've always done. The idea would be that all buildings will be built like that. So there is stick and carrot coming from government.
I don't build houses. But I think it's morally unacceptable to be adding to the housing stock with properties that are going to have to be adapted.
Yeah.
There are councils out there. Oxford City Council has set a zero carbon carbon standard, which goes above and beyond what government mandate, and I'm told they've been able to impose that on new developments. So it'd be interesting. Maybe we should look that one up. And there are councils doing SDG-driven developments as well. Just on the land piece, our business does have a land promotion business, and most landowners will sell to the developer who pays them the most money.
Yeah.
And the one who pays the most money, there's a market value of housing generally, and I'm not sure the market has settled on the extra over for really high performing properties. So low carbon, solar panels, that instinctively feels that there is a premium for it, but I don't know if the market's settled on that. And therefore the delta between, ultimately when standards change and houses become more costly to build, I would expect the landowners are going to get less money. That's kind of makes economic sense to me. I'm pleased to say we are working with landowners on development infrastructure who are custodians of land and have been for many hundreds of years, who are interested in doing the right thing, and they're not engaging with the normal house builders and not engaging with normal developers. And there are little beacons of greenness and great optimism around the country, and just probably Max, find those beacons and find those developers and get them to Cheltenham.
Excellent. Can we move? Yes. No, just behind you, the woman here. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, good. Here comes the mic.
People start listening.
Questions about the regulations. That's factoring from the if we look at on that, when we build a zero carbon home now, what I was observing about 8 years ago, the body houses were innovating, and they were bringing in new technology. I saw efficiency in Gloucestershire that had integrated solar panels, that was interesting. And then it was scrapped, and the volume house builders went back to just normal and the cheapest option. So the question is, could and should we bring back the code for sustainable homes? And if not, what on earth are we going to do to make sure that the affordable housing, quality of housing fashion standards, but how can we integrate this change? Everyone in this room, we're all obviously preaching to convert it somewhat, but how do we get everyone to stand up and say, bring back the standard and let's start building zero carbon homes straight away?
My response to that and my impression is that there are a lot of people and organisations out there who would absolutely support that, as I would. And you know, I've worked. I was at Waits for many years and Skanska for many years. In both cases, there was an absolute belief in the company, commitment to working to the highest possible standards. What happens is, if the goalposts shift and the regulations get relaxed, then it becomes impossible to follow these best practices. So essentially what you create is a corrupt market. So what we have to have is very strict rules that are absolutely enforced. And again, I come back to this point. We know that you can meet these. You get these lobbyists saying, oh, it's unaffordable and so forth. That's bollocks. Sorry, it's just, it's not true. There is misinformation out there from a very small number of vested interests, and very disappointingly, they seem to have been listened to by certain elements of government in the past. So all of us need to do whatever we can to encourage the strictest regulations around this and the enforcement of those regulations. And that will just set us on the way to where we need to get to.
I agree. I think it will be a welcomed return by many, many people. And it does have to be led by government. You take, for example, you know, the sprinkler system that has been introduced in all the new Welsh homes now. And I think that's been in place for the last sort of 2 years. That's something that was put in place pretty quickly, and developers got on board and they made it happen. We just need it pushed down. and there's no one who can argue that, and they would just cost exercise it into the price of their build anyway. But it really needs to be pushed from the top. But again, I've experienced challenges. You can speak to major house building forums, and quite frankly, I don't get any results. Even when I try to speak to them about the skills crisis and talk to them about educating people in the built environment and the skills that we need to sustain our own workforce, again, they don't want to know. They have a different agenda. I'd love to know what their agenda is, but I don't think this is on it.
I mean, would you mind, have you got I'm just wondering, we could try and go on to another question.
Yeah, okay.
Is that okay? Yeah. This gentleman here I've never seen before in my life. Can you just speak up a bit? Just do a bit of shouting. Yeah.
So basically what we can do, we can take 0.3% gravity, put it into concrete, and increase its strength by 30%. That innovation on its own has the possibility to reduce total CO2 levels by whole percentage points. And it's ready to go and it's cost effective. What's slowing us down is regulation. Regulation was brought in and said you must put a certain amount of cement and concrete. And that was to get around how we're buildings not putting enough cement into concrete and therefore buildings, bridges and things falling down. Until that's changed, we can roll technology out. So when you're putting these together just for your work, I guess my question is how do we ensure that we make clever decisions for the future? Because that's what we need. Engineers cause climate change. Engineers can solve it. But we need politicians to work with us. We need regulations that make sense. So I guess that's my question.
So I guess I'll come in on the concrete side. The thing about concrete is it's quite a complex product. You know, we added silica. Some of you that are maybe grey-haired can remember when we put silica in it, and for structural concrete we caused massive problems where we had bridges falling down. So there are some things in construction which take a little bit of time, which need the active learning, the active building centre, and people to experiment with first before I build thousands of them. Because again, you're in the product recall. If we're moving to manufacturing, which is what Sam wants us to do, then when they build a new car, they go and take it out and they try it for a couple of years. They don't go, well, we've got this great idea and we're going to do it, and oh, by the way, it doesn't work. Let's call it all back in again. So there are some areas where people are a little bit wary because of history. And as you say, the reason for those standards is because of experience, because we've experienced poor concrete. And in structural concrete, not so much mass concrete, because there are lots of low carbon companies doing low carbon concrete now and all the rest of it. But we have to be very careful when it comes to structural. So there's those kind of things which I think have a long gestation period, or a bit longer, and let's be a bit more careful with. And there are other things like digital and bringing in drones and doing things slightly different, which can come in tomorrow like that. And the clever thing is understanding which is which. I'm not a politician, I'm a civil servant, so I work for them. So they're not construction specialists. You know, I worked with this last Secretary of State, Robert Jenrick, who, brilliant guy, banned all combustible material on buildings over 18 metres. The amount of people that came in and said that was a really bad thing to do, and that includes all the people, the wood, you wouldn't believe timber products are still going on about it, because he said, you know, I'm going to ban anything. Anything that can burn must not go on the outside of a building, which is kind of, I get that. Right? Huge amount of people saying, well, what about the seals on the inside? How far does it go on the... And you end up with technical reasons why... and so they require people to make good justification, supported justification, and also evidence-based. And then we can change in some areas. But if it requires primary legislation, it'll take 2 to 3 years to get that in. You know, legislation and the Houses of Parliament is, as I came out of industry and went into government, it's a lot slower than I was expecting it to be. So I think you're right, it's got to be taken. You've got to get people like the Active Building Centre or the Construction Innovation Hub or one of Sam's, that's why we have